Eric Klopfer. I'm a professor at MIT. I run the teacher education program as well as a group we call the Education Arcade. I'm also co-faculty director for the PK-12 initiative within JWEL. JWEL is the Jameel World Education Lab, and it's a new program that started at MIT just within the last year to really sort of basically improve education everywhere, to make it accessible, to make it world-class education to all those people in the world who desire to have that education. Within JWEL, we have 3 different divisions. We have the PK-12 division, which I'm co-faculty director for, and we also have a university level education and a workforce level education as well. My work focuses on PK-12 education, both in my sort of faculty work as well as within JWEL. And in that space, we sort of think about really work from pre-kindergarten all the way on through secondary school, and how we think about how we can improve that all around the world, both domestically and internationally. So I'm a biologist by training. My undergraduate and graduate degrees are in biology. A lot of the work that I did in my graduate work was around computational biology, theoretical biology, so I did a lot of computer modeling of biological systems. And my story is that somewhere during my PhD thesis, one of my advisors on my PhD committee saw my work that I was doing, the software I was doing, and said, "Hey, wouldn't you like to apply that to my class instead of your research?" And I said, "Sure." And that was really where it took off for me in terms of thinking about the educational applications of a lot of computer technologies. And so after my PhD, I taught computer science in a high school and middle school, did a postdoc in education, and during that postdoc in education met Mitch Resnick here at the Media Lab, and started working with him doing educational technology applications in schools in New Mexico, having them engaging teachers and students in modeling of complex systems. And then it was just a few years later that I met my colleague Kurt Squire, who's now at the University of California, Irvine, who came here to work with Henry Jenkins, who's now at the University of Southern California, and they were doing work on educational games. And the leap from simulations to games was a natural one to me, and I've been working on educational games and simulations ever since now, for probably since about 2001, I think I started working on games. So, I wear a number of hats here at MIT. One is I'm director of the Scheller Teacher Education Program, known as STEP. So one of the things we do there is we prepare MIT undergraduates who want to be math and science teachers. It's been a long-standing program and one that a lot of students are having interest in. When I started here at MIT a number of years ago, I had to hang up posters and take out ads in the tech in order to get a dozen students into my class, and now we have to unfortunately turn away about 2/3 of the students who want to be in those classes because there's just such a demand for education on campus. And I think that's really been a big shift in the way students think in the last dozen years or so that I've been here. But a lot of my time I spend thinking about the research that we do through the umbrella we call the Education Arcade, which focuses on games and simulations in education. And that's been a big area of our research for quite a number of years, an area that resonates with a lot of teachers, with a lot of innovators in STEM education. And the way we think about that is not games as simply motivators for kids, the way a lot of people I think have simplified the use of games in the educational media space, where games are really just a score to get kids to move forward. We really think about the deep underlying mechanics of games that really motivate people, that get them to really solve hard problems. So we finished a game a couple years ago that still a lot of people are using called the Radix Endeavor. It's a massively multiplayer online game for math and science, particularly high school biology and geometry and statistics, a little bit of algebra. It was a game we designed several years ago with funding from the Gates Foundation. It's gotten out to hundreds of thousands of kids at this point in time, and it presents them with sort of challenges that are set in a fictional Renaissance era-like world, where they have to use science and engineering to basically make this world a better place. They have to work with their peers, they have to use science and engineering to sort of solve problems like breeding medicinal plants that have particular characteristics, or repairing buildings using certain geometric patterns. And they do it all in the context of these characters, but all the time we're also collecting data in terms of what they're doing to both help us as researchers understand how kids are learning, as well as help them sort of move them in the right pathway. If they struggle on a challenge in a particular way, we can sort of move them in a different direction that helps address that challenge. If they're really mastering a topic quickly, we can have them move on in other directions. I think that's one of the projects I'm still the most proud of in terms of the way we were able to design it and sort of the impact that it's had. We think about some of those same things. We're just beginning a new project now on game-based assessment, which is a series of mobile games. As we think about the ways we actually get into classrooms, the way we actually reach kids and teachers, having kids sit down on a computer for some amount of time can actually be a barrier because a lot of teachers think about, well, it takes up too much class time, maybe not all my kids have access outside of schools. But as we think about the secondary school level, we know that well over 90–95% of kids at this point have phones in their pockets. And we're able to now use some of those things to be able to do similar kinds of activities where they're able to do challenges on their phones, maybe in the sense of maybe they're only working 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, but they're doing it in maybe 2 or 3 minute bursts. So they come back to it again and again and again. And over the course of weeks, they actually spend a fair bit of time on it. And that's data that can come to them to help them address where they're having challenges. And it's data that can also come to their teachers. So they know how their students are faring with the topics that they're teaching. Rather than waiting until the unit test at the end of the unit, they're able to get real-time feedback on how their students are understanding the topics. So the previous project in Radix, we focused on high school math and biology. At this point, we're focusing on mathematics with this game-based assessment. We think that's a place where we can apply some of the analytic techniques that we're interested in working on the most easily, and it's also something that a lot of both kids and teachers struggle with finding good materials to be able to use in their classrooms. So they're playing games. In our game-based assessment project, the students are playing games, but they're facing challenges along the way. They're having to solve problems. And we can actually look at why not only do they solve the problems correctly or not within that space, but we can look at why they solve those problems correctly or why they struggle to solve those problems. And so we're able to do some assessment in terms of what the students are understanding by actually having them try to solve some of these problems in context. So the question you may ask, how is this assessment? We actually hope that students ask the same question. They should not feel like it's assessment. They should feel like it's activities that they're doing, but those activities produce data, and that data can help both their teachers and us understand what they're actually understanding. I have a colleague who's called some of this kind of assessment. She's called it, this is Val Shute, she's called it stealth assessment. The idea is that you're doing assessment that the students don't even know is assessment. It shouldn't be. Ultimately, hopefully, we create a space where students feel like assessment isn't a 4-letter word. One of the challenges that we face in educational technology, and I think a lot of other folks in university spaces doing educational technologies, is you create something, you maybe do some research with it, you even maybe scale it to some sort of impact, and the question is, how does it live on? It's a problem we face right now with our previous game, Radix. It's a game that now has gotten out to hundreds of thousands of kids, but the funding is gone. How do we actually sustain this product? It's something that we really think about. What are the other partners that we need in this process to be able to expand this and really be able to make a big difference in the space of learning? And so that means aligning with industry partners. That can mean folks who are in educational media industries, who are in technology industries, who are looking into moving into education, game-based companies who are interested in exploring educational products. These are the kinds of folks who we're looking to work with and have worked with over the years to think about how do we, in the university, we can take the risks. We can sort of develop the products that may be either too risky or too niche at the beginning to sort of think about developing within a private company. But we can actually do that work. We can take those initial steps, but then we need those industry partners to help us think about how do we take either that product or that idea and be able to get that out to larger audiences and figure out a way to make that scalable.